Does this work? Hi guys, my name is Sandra. Oh my gosh, this is so bad. My name is Sandra, invest with Archangel Ventures, and we have had the incredible pleasure to invest in Searcheye and their two co-founders that we lovingly call the two Chris's. We are so proud to have invested in Searcheye because they're producing a win-win for both publishers and brands, and they're bringing their lifetime of expertise to the space. I'll tell you a little bit about Chris because he'd probably be too shy to do it all himself. But Chris has had an incredible career with over 11 years in search, I believe. He's had over 11 years with search. He also learned SEO from the guy who coined the term himself, Bruce Clay, which, I mean, that's pretty cool. Chris has also led search marketing for many a startup in their absolute earliest days. Startups you guys might know, like OpenSea, Good Dog, Shogun, and many a YC company. So he's done it all. But if you thought that was not enough, Chris was also the head of growth at Gigster when there was only 3 employees at the team. At that time, I think it was, they set Chris a target and he said, target schmargets, let me blow this out of the water. And so I believe he grew revenue to 1.6 mil. Understand that was US too in just 6 weeks. And off the back of those type of like unreal metrics, raised 10 mil from A16Z. Another fun little fact there is that it was Michael Jordan's first tech investment. Yeah, pretty exciting. Anyway, I'll let you guys listen to the great man that is Chris and let him tell you all the things from his lifetime of experience.
Thanks, Sandra. All right, great. Thank you all for turning up. I know that an hour at a time, especially as founders and people starting businesses, is incredibly valuable. So what I'm presenting here is meant to deliver basically what I used to charge $30,000 for to a lot of tech startups. And hopefully you don't have to pay that much to anyone to get these insights. So the science of brand and how to pour fuel on search traffic. The context of that title is that what we're seeing when it comes to search marketing, and when I say search, I mean, to keep it simple, people searching for you on Google or searching for the problems that you solve on Google. How do you rank really highly, get revenue generating traffic? And the key these days is really building your brand signals. And so that's links, quotes, mentions, and things like that from media. Let's get started. Apologies that the font is a little small. So if you need to sit forward in one of the comfortable chairs up front, I wouldn't blame you. Again, that's me. Yeah, just as Sandra mentioned, very excited to have Artwork and Archangel Ventures as our investors in what we do. Yeah, that Gigster one, we went from 300K to 1.6 million in 5 weeks before a Y Combinator demo day. So that was very exciting. Although that was cold email, but also the brand signals I'm going to talk about today. And yeah, I used to actually I started out at Fishburners, so I can relate to a lot of folks here back when it was in 608 Harris Street. And I would come after work in my suit and tie from my 9-to-5 office job. And that was like 2012. So a really great OG crew, and I don't think we were all just these outsider weirdos. I don't think any of us ever expected it to be as awesome as it is now. Very different. There's a lot more rules now. We used to sit on the roof and drink beers, which would not have passed OH&S. I don't think that was sanctioned. Oh yeah, and then some of the startups I've worked with OpenSea when they're worth about 20 million on their search. I think a year and a half later they were 14 billion. Good Dog, I worked with them pre-launch. They're a marketplace. I know we have some marketplace founders. I think I emailed almost everyone individually and looked at the businesses you're working on. So I'll have a bit of context for some of those questions as they come up. But yeah, they were the second fastest growing marketplace in 2021, all off of the back of organic search. And they help people adopt buy dogs online in the United States in ethical ways. And then a bunch of other logos there. Clearbit, a bunch of Y Combinator companies. And here's why. I'm telling you this so you understand I know what I'm talking about and why you should listen. So this is a user that of our current platform and that I work with on search. They help people form US entities. We got them to outrank the IRS for a lot of basic tax terminology. And that's their organic traffic. And we angel invested in them as well as a company. So we actually know that search is bigger than all of their other channels combined. It was their smallest channel when we started with them. So why should you care about organic search? I'll go through the objections I hear often from founders, and I understand where they're coming from, but let me make the case first. 68% of online experiences begin with a search engine. 60% of marketers say that SEO and blog content is their highest quality source of leads. I am going to break the rule of not just reading your slides a little bit today because I assume some of you can't see them. 14.6% close rate for SEO leads. So especially, I know we've got a lot of folks here who have a B2B business. That's kind of one of my favorite places because you'll have a lot of people, well, you'll have decent search volume, low competition, and it converts really well. So here's why you should do and look at search. The CACs are very low. Anyone can start doing Facebook or Google ads, and those are increasing about 80–90% year on year in terms of cost. And I'll send out the slides afterwards too, so you'll all have a copy. Feel free to take photos though, I don't mind. The results compound over time. The moment you stop spending on ads, those go away. But if you stop spending on organic search, it will decay very slightly over time, but generally speaking, you have that benefit for a long period of time. I like to put it, why rent when you can own? You should maybe rent it first for some keywords to see if they're valuable, but once you've established they are, you want to own that real estate. It builds a moat, so it actually has asset value around the business. If you look at Canva, NerdWallet, and I'm going to explain a bit about them in the future, in a future slide, one of the things that gives them an incredible amount of defensibility around what they do is this search moat. Tech is very difficult to build, but it's very easy to copy, so it's not very defensible. It adds to your brand, which I know a lot of folks here are thinking about brand. So if you constantly see, I'm sure you've all felt it as well, if I'm looking at a space where I don't know a lot about and I'm looking for a solution, if I see the same names coming up over and over again in the search results, I start to trust and believe that brand because discovery trumps disclosure. If I turn up, you know, and I say to someone, hey, I have a Lamborghini, aren't I cool? They're like, not really. Like, you just came and told me you had a car. That's kind of lame. But if like you discover that I have a Lamborghini and I never mentioned it, you're like, that's kind of cool. It's a bit that way with search. So if you're on social media or you're on an ad and you're pushing your brand in front of people, that's not bad. That'll still help. And don't be shy. It looks better on camera if you sit at the front. But then people standing room only, that's cool too. So whereas in search, people trust a lot more what they find. Maybe less and less over time, a little bit, I won't lie. SEO's kind of ruined things somewhat, but it's still something that most people really trust. And it's a lot less competitive. Consider this. 6% of clicks from Google go to the ads. 70% of clicks go to the organic listings. 80 billion a year is spent on the ads. Oh, sorry, the other way around. 200 billion a year is spent on the ads. 80 billion is spent on the organic. So just macro level, it's a lot less competitive. Here are the fears I always hear from founders about whether or not to invest in search. The biggest fear is speed. Will it pay back quickly? You can spin up an ad and get results today, tomorrow, and test things. And I think you should, and I think that's a great way to go. But search can actually move a lot faster than you think. You'll often hear the objection, I've been told it takes 3 to 6 months. That's usually because agencies like to sandbag, so they look like the hero if they can get your results in 2 to 3. Also, if I can tell you it's going to take 6 months and you got to pay me for 6 months, that's probably better for me, right? Complexity. It seems a little more difficult and unapproachable and mysterious than paying for ads. But actually, if you can understand HTML, you can understand SEO, or you can understand search. It's actually not that hard, I don't think. I think there's just a huge advice industry that makes it complicated, so they can then sell you the solution. Classic marketing, right? Like, it's not just diet and exercise. You have to do this complicated routine, and I know what it is. You should pay me for that. So I'm here to tell you it's not that tricky. And trust. I don't know who to trust to help me with this. Because if you don't know a space, it's like when I'm hiring an employee for a role I haven't done myself before, it's a little harder for me to know are they good or not. And I think it's the same with search. It's a little harder for people to judge. It doesn't help that probably half your spam folder is filled with people telling you your website doesn't rank well enough, and I know how to help. So there's been a lot of people salting the earth for years, making it a little bit more difficult. Okay, so what I'm going to give you today, I'm going to talk about mindsets, practical, low-hanging fruit things that you can action today, tomorrow, within the next week, and then how to think about this space in general so that you're best set up. So I'm trying to balance the two. I love this meme. By show of hands, who knows what the midwit meme is? No one? Oh my. I'm on the internet too much. So the midwit meme, what I'm basically showing you here, you've got a normal curve with the Jedi Master at one end and the idiot at the other. And they both have the same answer when it comes to things. So this could be like productivity, this could be, investing, or what have you. What the Jedi Master and the idiot both do well, even though they come at the same answer, different paths, is create content, get mentions, get links. That's it. That's basically all you need to do in search. Where people get stuck is in the middle, where they overstress things. I'm sure you can relate to this in your own lives with different things, where you're like, oh, it's so overwhelming, like nutrition or fitness or pretty much anything. So if I applied this to investing, it's like buy great companies, wait a long time. That would be the midwit thing. But in search, it's create content, get mentions and links. That's really what you have to do. Everything else you can pretty much ignore. It's a distraction, it's a waste of time, it's fake work. And I have a belief as a founder, the number one thing that's going to kill you is fake work. So ignore fake work, delay, and ignore things that don't matter, even if they're painful. So the other mindset, move fast and break things. True 80-20 mindset. I've just stolen Facebook's mantra. I think it's a good one. Don't sweat the small stuff until later. So some of these things in the middle will eventually matter. Until they do, don't worry about them. And remember that SEO is a solved problem, or search marketing is a solved problem. What I mean by a solved problem is accounting is a solved problem. In any of your businesses, you should not be innovating on accounting unless you're an accounting business or something like that. You shouldn't be trying to figure it out. You just need to find the playbook for the solution and apply the playbook. That's it. Sales is the solved problem. Go-to-market is usually a solved problem. Pretty much everything in your business is applying a solved problem playbook, except for whatever it is that you're innovating on or doing differently. So search is a solved problem. And I think that helps because it gets you off the hook from having to feel like you need to be creative or do something different or come up with something new to like make it happen. No, it's just figure out what works, do that. Whatever's working, double down. Well, it's not working, just cut it and just keep iterating. All right, there are 3 pillars for SEO in search. 10% is site setup and technical, 20% is content, 70% of the brand signals. And I use the words brand signals, links, mentions, quotes interchangeably. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by those when I get to the later slides. Welcome. No, I'm just happy you're here. There's like 200 ranking factors. You can ignore almost all of them. And if you're like, someone tells you to worry about them, you can just say, no, Chris told me I don't have to worry about that. So I'm here to let you off the hook. I'm going to go through all 3 pillars. This should take about 40 minutes total, and then at the end, 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, question and answer. All right, so back to the fake work. Site setup and technical, yes, you need to get it to a certain point. It's not going to differentiate you on performance, but not having it done means you'll probably fail. So it's the analogy I always use is if you're going to do Formula 1, having the fastest car doesn't mean you win, but having the slowest car means you lose. So you just need a car that's fast enough to win, and then the rest is going to be your driver, your crew. I don't really know the sport that well, but whatever else differentiates you. This is that. This is just don't have a really bad car. It's measurable and it feels good to fix things technically. Oh, like I updated my sitemaps. I updated this. I went through a checklist. You should do some of those things. It's like good, like for 10 minutes of work, it's worthwhile. But this is where like the best fake work lives. This is where the work that feels really good and doesn't actually move the needle will be. It's going to be here. So that's why I do the chef's kiss. Agencies love this stuff, by the way. Consultants love this stuff because I can show you what I did and you can be like, yeah, you did do that thing. And I'm like, I did my part, man. Now you can pay me. But you're like, well, hang on, but where are my results? You know? So this is why you should ignore it. Here's when you don't need to ignore it. When you have glaring fundamental errors, for example, there's a thing called a no index tag that goes in the HTML. If that's on your home page, that's an instruction in the HTML that tells all the search engines, don't put me in the search engine. So if someone searches for your site, you won't show up. That's an error you want to fix. Glaring fundamental things like that. And I'll go into a couple of these in a moment. If you've got more than 1,000 pages on your site and you're a listing platform or a marketplace or an e-commerce site, that's when you're going to want to think a bit more about the technical side. I've worked with some sites that have hundreds of thousands of pages. A lot of them are getting search traffic, 100,000 pages on one page template. So I know if I can improve that page template by 5%, that's going to impact across the site. That's a good ROI. If you've got 10 pages, it's a terrible ROI. Or if you're getting a large amount of traffic, and just to quantify it, more than 10,000 hits a month. These are like just rules of thumb. Unless any of these apply to you, just ignore this. Just ignore technical setup. Get it? Go through the checklist I'm going to provide, make sure that stuff's done, and then move on. So that's why I say there. Come back to B and C when you're more than 1,000 pages or more than 10,000 hits a month, then you can come back to moving the needle on technical. Here's a few more things you can look at on the technical side. And we're not going to go over them. That's for the appendix. So I go through some 80/20 in here, like the no index tag, setting up the XML sitemaps, having a robots.txt file. I know this is all jargony stuff that for some of you, this is the first time you've heard of it, and your eyes might glaze over a bit. But I put this in the appendix, and I'll be sending the deck out afterwards, so you'll be able to go through it. And if there's anything in there that's really confusing or you don't understand, just send me an email, and I can usually send you something to help with it. I just don't want to tie up your time with it now, because I don't think that's the best value I can provide for you. Here's how to get someone else. I usually do these on Zoom, and I'm more comfortable swearing. I'm going to keep it a little PG today. Here's how to get someone else to do this for you, because as an entrepreneur, you want to be leveraging wherever you can. You can email me and ask for my checklist. I'll send it to you. You can sign up for, actually, what you can do is you can go on Upwork, look for someone with a senior SEO background, or even better on LinkedIn. Right now, it's a great market for hiring, so there's a lot of people looking for some spare change. You want to find someone who's worked in a search marketing agency for like a while, and then just approach them on LinkedIn and say, hey, can I pay you like $250 for like 2 hours? And you just go through my site, we'll go through it together, I'm going to record it, and you just tell me everything I need to do. And then I'll go do the legwork and fix it. For them, it's great because they get paid a little bit of money for a bit of their time. If you were to go to the agency directly and get something quoted and scoped, they're probably going to charge you $5K for that just to make it worth their while. So this way you can kind of get the same result, but without having to pay the money. And then you could even propose like a 1 to 4 hour audit from them, something like that. So you're just trying to get these value arbitrages. Because people in agencies that do this stuff, like an SEO analyst, they're probably getting like 70, 80K a year. But on the side, they're happy to moonlight. So I used to get requests like this. They were good. It's a good way to start. Actually, one of the things you can do there is if they're looking, you think they're going to go become a consultant, just say, hey, if you do a great job, I'll just like be your #1, like use me for testimonials in your marketing, use my logo on your site. Like you're looking for these value arbitrages because right now, for a lot of you, cash is going to be your most conservative resource. You need to really preserve. That means you're going to pay in time, or you're going to pay in things that don't cost you as much. So like on the hiring side, that's like giving someone the job title they want. That doesn't cost you a lot, but that means a lot to that person, and that helps them in their next role to get even more salary. That's what you can do here. You can say, hey, I'll be a testimonial. I could potentially introduce you to people I know who are starting businesses. That doesn't cost you much in money, but that's really valuable to them. So that's the arbitrage you're looking for. All right, next pillar, content. So content is the thing you're creating. It's meant to rank highly in the search engine. So most people, when I say content, they imagine like an article or something editorial. What I'm actually talking about is any kind of URL on your site that can rank well. So if you're a real estate listing site like Domain, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, then when you think they've got a neighborhood or a house or something like that, that's all going to be a different URL. You wouldn't normally think of that as content for a lot of people, but for the purposes of what we're talking about, that is content. That's a page that can rank for like Balcombe Hills home for sale. So even though it was made programmatically, that's still content. And that's what I mean when I say content. So that should sometimes give you ways to think a bit more laterally about things that you can do. So the rule of thumb is each piece of content or each page is targeting one keyword or one idea. And then that's what you're trying to get to rank well. So I've listed a few types of content: editorial, blog posts, that kind of thing. Listings pages, again, e-commerce, marketplace, something like that, or user-generated content. So that's like the holy grail of content. So does anyone know what I've already listed them. Reddit is one of these, Yelp, AllTrails. These are sites where users are creating pages for free that then rank well and get traffic from search engines. So if you're a restaurant and you get a lot of reviews, that restaurant is going to rank highly from Reddit's site. That'll rank really highly when someone searches for that restaurant and often outrank the restaurant, right? So you either have this or you don't. If you have it, great. There's very few times where like it might not be obvious to you, but you could figure out a way to do it. I've seen a lot of companies waste a lot of time trying to figure out how to do user-generated content. It's not usually something that's easy to do unless it's really obvious. If you have a nutrition site, for example, then maybe a forum or something like that. They're a bit old school, but sometimes people sharing their information might be a way to get something along those lines. Yeah, I think there was someone who's doing a medical platform where they're listing doctors. I've seen that work really well if you can get the doctors to post answers to questions. Now, obviously, they're going to have to be really careful with what they say, but even a little bit that goes a really long way. Okay. Here's, again, it'll be in the appendix, but let me give you the 80-20 to figure out content. So go into a tool called Ahrefs, or you can use SEMrush. Take your competitors' websites, put it in that tool, and then look at what their top pages are by keywords. So you see which of their pages that are performing the best and ranking really well. And then you're going to take all of those keywords and just basically put them in a spreadsheet. And then you run that list of keywords through the tool again, and it'll tell you the search volume per month and how difficult it is on a scale of 1 to 100 to rank highly for it on Google. So that's like the 80-20. Step 3, clustering them together. I won't get too deep in the weeds, but if you have like Balcombe Hills home in Balcombe Hills, those are 2 separate keywords, but they mean the same thing, right? So you want to group those together. And then 3, you stack rank all those keywords, and then you figure out which are the best ones for you to target, what's going to be the easiest. Okay, we actually do this, but this is an example of our sheet. We've built a tool that does this automatically. So this is an example we did for we just picked a site that we've heard of, like Turo, which is like car next door renting cars. And we were able to say, hey, you don't have a page on Type A car rental. You should create that page. It'll cost you about $450 to build it, just ballparking the content. It should be a product page, not a blog post. So, like a landing page. It should be a hub page. And we even tell them about how many links they're going to need. So this is a document we do where we're basically saying, where should you spend $1 in search to generate the biggest return and to get that dollar paid back to you the fastest so you can reinvest it. So we're bringing that like PPC concept of return on ad spend to search marketing. Here's some more 80-20. Again, apologies for the small font. But here's other ways to rapidly generate content. Take your support ticket or support things people are asking about around your product. That's often going to live in an email. And you could just take what you've written in emails. I mean, you're writing emails all day long. A lot of that can be repurposed into content. Most people don't think of it that way necessarily, but I think sometimes I've written a reply and I'm like, that could have been a blog post. And then I could just like link to the blog post whenever someone asks me. Talk to your sales team if you have one. What are the questions customers consistently ask? What are the objections they always get? Turn that into content. User conversations. For all of you who are really early on, because I know we've got some folks here who are really early on in their journey, you should be talking to users constantly. Like I do subscribe to that Y Combinator advice of talk to your users. You should be taking those conversations, writing up your learnings or using AI to write up your learnings and turning that into content. Industry statistics pages. I'll talk about this again, but gather up all of the statistics you can find in your industry and create a page for it. That actually is an underrated tactic. And then repurpose all of these for newsletters, social media, those kinds of things. The hardest part about this is figuring out who's going to write your content. This is like one of the two biggest problems in search. This is like number 2. We're working on the biggest problem, which I'll mention in a moment. But finding someone to write your content, it's very time consuming. But you can absolutely leverage ChatGPT, AI, these kind of tools to move faster. That creates a bit of a challenge somewhere else because everyone's doing that, so it's a little harder to stand out. Which does bring me on to the third pillar, which is what really drives performance are brand signals. So again, a brand signal is when someone links to your website, talks about you on their blog or in social media or in a YouTube video. It's when you get mentions, all of those things. I'm mainly talking about the online. There's probably a conversation we can have about offline as well. This has been the key thing for Google for since '98. This hasn't changed. This is the largest signal from first principles. It makes sense. Even in a world with AI content, this is going to continue to be the main signal because if everyone can equally create high quality content just as easily, you have to differentiate on brand. Whenever a space becomes a commodity, you differentiate on brand. It's like orange juice, right? That's how you sell orange juice is you've got to convince someone your brand is better. So as technology and content become more commodified, it's going to be these brand signals. An analogy I like to use is under AI recently, I noticed this trend where people were able to create Kanye West songs that sounded like Kanye and Jay-Z songs that sounded like Jay-Z. What their record labels, like Rock Nation, did was they would copyright strike all of these and get them taken down, which, it's mostly run by lawyers. That's their first instinct, take things down. What Grimes did was she sanctioned the content that she felt actually represented her and licensed it 50-50. So when you think about what she's doing there, she's realized she doesn't have to create the music anymore. She can just leverage the creator economy and use her brand signal to say, this represents me. And then that creator gets clout, I guess we would call it, but they're getting the benefit of that signal. And this has been a feature in music for a long period of time. People will be a feature on a track, and that's how they come up and get in front of new audiences. So I know that's a little abstract, but that's kind of what I picture in my head when I think of brand signals. You want some other people in your industry or other reputable sites, media sites, academia, to link to and mention your brand because it confers authority, trust, reliability, and authenticity to your brand. So it's been this way for 25 years plus. It'll continue to be this way. So typically this has been in links. I'll let you go over this when I send the deck, but basically a link is anytime you're on a website or a blog post and you see that blue link and it points to some other website. That's what I'm talking about with links. here's how you would get them in the past. I sort of taken this from our pitch deck, so this is real. I did this. I'll tell you a bit of an anecdote. I was working with an ed tech company during COVID, and it was March, April 2020, and they were like Netflix, but for kids' books. So you pay $10 a month and you get access to 40,000 kids' books that your children could read. COVID came along, they made a free tier for themselves, and we just said, all right, let's promote this out to the world. So I said, all right, I want to reach out to every single school in the United States and give them a blog post that they can publish of the best resources parents can use while their kids are at home. And they were number one on that list. And so we reached out to about 40 to 50,000 sites. I don't know if I want to say publicly how much they paid me, but like median Australian salary for 3 months' work. We reached out to 50,000 sites. We got about 50 to 100 of them to, I think it was like 80 or so, to actually link back to us. Think about how bad that conversion rate is. But that's like the standard operating procedure. Now you know why you get sometimes emails asking for a link or could you mention me or something like that. I white labeled my friend's team in the Philippines of about 8 people to do that work because I was a solo consultant. I didn't want to go hire a bunch of people. It took about 2 to 4 months, and in that case, we didn't actually need to pay publishers because they were schools. But most of the time, on top of paying for that team, we would have had to have compensated the end publisher as well, because now they ask for that payment. That's one way to get these. It's not fun. It sucks. If that sounds fun to you, you should work in search marketing or prison or something. But that's not fun to me. Hey, I got a laugh. Cool. That's why in our field, the field of getting these signals, it's 46% of users have switched providers 2 or more times in the past 12 months. And the NPS of the industry, if you know what that score is 0. So that's like about the level of Comcast. You know, like people would rather deal with Telstra than deal with providers in this field. So doing it yourself, not a great option. Using existing providers, not a great option. But I will give you the 80-20, just like I promised. If you have investors, get them to link to you, right? From their portfolio page, things like that. If you have vendors, suppliers, counterparts, users, ask them to link to you. Offer to do a guest post on their site. Offer to do testimonials for the tools and services you use, but insist on getting a link back if you can, right? So that's something that's value for them, value for you. The reason I mention this is you'll pay, gosh, you know, you can pay anywhere between $500 and $3,000 for a link. That's how valuable they are, and this is how much they drive performance when it comes to search marketing and these brand signals. Hit up your founder tech and vendor networks. If you're in Fishburners, talk to the people at desks next to you. Go to the events. Find people in your field. Say, hey, I'd love to write a post on what we're working on and put out a new site. Figure out what they want to talk about and create content for them. Create that industry statistics page I was telling you about. If you list all of the important metrics and statistics in your field in one place, people love to, when they're doing research to write a blog post or create content themselves, they're going to see those statistics and they're going to cite and link to you as the reference. And so those can become lightning rods for what you do. Do surveys, do original research in your field. These are like ways to double dip, because if you're talking to users and you're trying to figure things out, you'll probably want to do surveys anyway. I used to be a teacher in Korea, and I launched a social network. This is one of the things I was doing 10 years ago at Fishburners. Terrible business ideas. I worked on a lot of bad business ideas. And it was going to be a social network for teachers living in Korea, okay. So like, what I did was I did a survey of all of the teachers, and I thought I'd get 50 responses, but I actually got 250 people, and it was a 50-question survey. Like, asked about their whole lives, everything. But I turned that into content. Turned out, it wasn't that surprising to me, but teachers in Korea are not always the happiest people and like have a lot of issues and they don't feel heard because they're living in a foreign country where they don't speak the language. So giving them an outlet to feel heard in that community was like a lightning rod. It worked really, really, really well on the content side. Shame about the business itself, but I've done this with some of my clients in different spaces. They run surveys that can get you branded as a thought leader and an expert. And most people don't want to do any work. They just don't want to like run a survey. They'd rather cite your statistics. We do digital PR. You can do newsworthy things. An example I always love for this is Kogan, which, by the way, like their email policy is awful. I just have to say that. I hesitated buying. I've deliberately not bought things from Kogan because I'm like, I'm gonna get resubscribed to like 20 emails, and I don't want that. But what they did really well with digital PR back in the Internet Explorer days, when a lot of people were using that browser, it would cost websites a lot more money to design a site that worked well with Internet Explorer as well. And so as an e-commerce platform, they just marked up their prices by 30% if you were using Internet Explorer. And they had a banner saying, hey, you're paying the Internet Explorer tax because it costs us more money to build a site for you. If you want to avoid the tax, just download Chrome and buy this product using Chrome, and you won't have to pay 30% more. Now, it was fun, and it did help their user base shift to a better technology for them. But what that did was suddenly media thought this was this hilarious story. So they would, they got all these links from media. So this is where you're paying in creativity. If you can think of something creative in your field that you could do, it's a bit of a stunt, but if you do it well, look at the eucalyptus guys, look at the koala guys. Australians are incredible at this. I spent 4 years in Silicon Valley. I'm living in Canada at the moment. One thing I can tell you is I think the best digital marketers in the world come from Sydney, hands down. I don't meet anyone as smart or as switched on or as sharp in general, and I've met a lot of great folks in the Valley, and pound for pound, I think we do it better here. So seek out those people and hear what's working. By the time they're talking in a conference, it's too late. That means the edge is gone, and the best thing that marketing tactic can do for them is get them attention at a conference. If it works really, really well, they don't want their competitors to know, because eventually everyone figures it out and they copy it. So putting up a billboard where you get sued, and if you get sued by someone famous because you didn't get permission, that can work really well for getting you a lot of media attention. I wouldn't say it's not legal advice, don't do that, please, but these are tactics that you have seen some of the companies I've mentioned use to great effect. So you can get really creative. I linked to a page here that's got like 300 different creative ways. Like there was a restaurant in Portland that did a billboard underwater. They never actually did, but they said that they had an underwater billboard for submarines, and their restaurant got hundreds of links because it was just that fun, quirky kind of story people wanted to talk about. Work backwards from what media wants to talk about and get into that flow, and you can get a lot of value there. And don't be afraid to cold email. At worst, they just ignore you, and it didn't cost you anything. But whenever we've got press coverage, it's always come from us emailing directly, not from an agency. All right, I'm going to talk my own book. Surprise, surprise. Or you can work on our platform. This is the hardest problem in our field, and we've built a platform to solve it. We actually work with publishers, and we present opportunities on the front end. I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. It's pretty simple, though. You just log in, see what's available, and you can get mentions, links, and quotes. By show of hands, who's familiar with Harrow? Help a reporter out. 1, 2. Well, first of all, go use Help a Reporter Out. It's a probably good place to start. That's where journalists and media source quotes. But we're doing a better version of that as well as part of our platform. Here's what it looks like. So come onto the platform. Let's say you're a crypto site. You can see CoinLib. They're doing an article on what we can learn from Singapore's approach to cryptocurrency. Select genuine content, articles. You can see it's going to cost you this much. Here are all the metrics. You just order, and then you can get the signals that you need that will power your search performance. So we're really focused on helping companies generate that search signal. It's going to power their performance. And then, like I showed you before, we actually have an ROI product, so we can tell you, hey, go after this keyword. That's when you're going to get that dollar back the fastest. And like I showed you earlier on with Doula, they went from, they've given us permission to talk about it, but they went, from spending, 5, 10K a month to basically sending me emails saying, how do we just spend the maximum amount? Because Every time we put $1 in, we're seeing 5 come back, and everyone else is plowing it into ads. This is our edge. This builds a moat around our business. And also, they didn't say this, but that's something that adds asset value at an exit. You know, if you have all of the keywords in the space, anyone can go compete with you on ads. But if you're ranking #1 for everything in that space, then of course anyone interested in that space is going to want to acquire you. All right, a couple of quick case studies. So I assume you're all familiar with Canva. If not, I can't help you. It's only so much I can do. But all of their growth early on, they had product-led growth. So yes, people use the product to refer in their coworkers, but actually pretty much all of their early stage growth came off of the back of search marketing. People in the know in Sydney will understand that, but a lot of people don't. So what they would do, and this is like an actual email, they've got like a team of like 200-300 people in the Philippines who were doing outreach. I don't think they do that as much. That's what they were doing when they started out. Because if you think about it, think of every time you need a design product, right? Wedding invitations, designing a card for, Mother's Day or something like that. There's like a ton of different design things that you need. Doing a flyer, doing a brochure, doing a magazine cover. So they would have like top 10 wedding invitation designs as a blog post, and then they would show all of their templates, and then that would lead into the product. There's hundreds of thousands of searches like that, and they were like, well, we'll just do all of them. We'll just build up all of that content. We'll get the links. That's what this is. Remember how I said doing that email outreach? Hi, Russ, how are you? I hope you're doing well and coping well during these times. I'm from Canva, reaching out because I saw your article on Instagram stories. I thought our resource would be great for that post, right? So this worked for them, and it's the basis of their multi-billion-dollar empire. So this is something startups do. Monday.com did it as well. They were able to find consistent, reliable templates. So what is, for example, project management software? So for every one of their product lines, there are like 4 or 5 types of posts that you can create, and they would just reliably create those over time. So it's a bit like a real estate website where you're just going to have a different suburb, but the same type of page. And I go through some of the metrics there. This is probably my favorite one, even though it's not the most valuable company on the case studies list, but NerdWallet. And I link here to a YouTube talk that Tim Chen, the founder there, gave on how they drove all of their business value with content and links. They just spent the first 3 to 4 years obsessing over getting good at those 2 drivers for search traffic. And it's, they're like $1 billion company. The really neat thing is the stronger your site gets from, we call it domain rating, which is a score from 0 to 100. The stronger your site gets and the more relevant it gets in your space, the easier it becomes to just branch out into the next adjacent space and get search traffic from it. So they started with personal finance, but now they do credit cards, loans, insurance, small business, taxes, travel, like travel credit cards, mortgages, investing, right? So you can keep expanding infinitely across. Your only limitation is your business model or what you're targeting. So yeah, 86% of their traffic comes from search, right? So, and from the stats I told you before, like dollar for dollar, it gets like 1/29th the investment that paid channels get. So I think the thing to keep in mind is 15% of searches that Google sees every day, it's seeing for the very first time, which should blow you away when you think about the exponential that is. It used to be 25%. I haven't seen that stat for like 5-6 years, the 15%, so it might be down to like 10%. But yeah, I mean, if you can come up with searches really quickly when you think about it. It'd be like Christian Thurston, search I, fish burners, Friday, or something. No one's ever searched that before. That's just like 5 words. So that's why this opportunity is like a mega trend in my mind. People just sort of forget about search sometimes. And it's like every one of us is going to use search today, like probably like 50 to 100 times. And I've talked about Google here because it's the easiest to understand, but actually it's fragmenting. It's going to be across YouTube, I know Google owns that, but across Spotify, across social channels. Gen Z, when they search for venues, entertainment, that sort of thing, they search on TikTok. They don't search on Google. And it's a better user experience. But the fundamental behind every search engine are the brand signals I'm talking about, links and mentions. All right, 45 minutes, not too bad. A bit verbose. But any questions? Go ahead. Should I give the mics, man? And testing. Just name and company as well.
Oh, Jacob, Unicorn Shift. So we, in our space, there's very low search volume. Is this an appropriate channel for us?
So what was the space? Just so everyone can...
Oh, well, basically civil infrastructure services. It's an unusual, well, yeah, people generally don't search for that. Yeah, I mean, when we look at keyword searches, it's very low.
Could you give me an example of how someone, like what your product does and how someone uses it, so I can get my head around it?
Right, yeah. Okay, let's say you are, you need to maintain a road, you're an asset manager, and you need contractors on site tomorrow. Basically, that's what we do. We make that happen.
Okay, so I'm a council or government or something like that, typically?
Generally, let's just say you're an asphalt contractor and you need a profiler there tomorrow.
Okay, so it's sort of on demand, so there's a time-sensitive element. Usually, yeah, there's going to be a little trickier. I'd say in your case, and in cases like these where I'm guessing you make a lot of money in that, yeah, so it's high ticket, low volume, usually low competition, but it's also when they need the service, they're probably going to, the Google ads are probably going to be quite popular. It's like, I liken it to like emergency plumbers, right? If you need an emergency plumber, how long are you going to take to figure out who you're going to hire? You're not going to be like, let me read like 15 Yelp reviews and like, no, you're just going to call every number you find immediately because like your bathroom's overflowing and it's 3 a.m. Like, you're going to move really quickly. So when you're in that consideration phase in market, that's going to be a smaller percentage of the time. But there's going to be a really large percentage of the time where you're top of the funnel and the awareness phase, and that's where search is going to matter for you. So you've got to think, what are the different problems that person has, the asphalt company, right, where they need someone in. You want to be doing a bit more thought leadership around the terms that matter to them and what are their day-to-day problems so that people become really familiar with your brand and you're always top of mind so that when they do have that problem, you're the first person they think of, you're the first person they call. If I need an emergency plumber, I'm going to call my plumber I'm already using. If I'm going to hire a plumber for a larger job that I'm not as time sensitive, that's the time at which I can start to get introduced to someone. I'm not thinking about plumbing every day, but if I'm a building manager, I might be thinking about it more often. So if there's a site that always talks about different problems building managers have, and I'm always in that flow and I see on their site they do plumbing, then when I'm going to go hire someone, they're probably my first port of call. So you're going to be thinking more top of the funnel, what are the problems they have every day in that kind of search volume, and then you just want to be top of mind when they need what you do.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, not at all. Ma'am? Any other questions? And please be selfish. Oh, we got a over here. Good job, Sandra. Just hold it close.
Just a question on behalf of clients. Generally, how relevant is keyword bombing in this day and age, and like, does it work still?
When you say keyword bombing, what do you mean?
Essentially, write an article based on the most popular keywords in your niche, for instance, or based on the example that you gave, just get your competitor's website and see what they're ranking for, and write a bunch of articles based on those keywords. So is that still something that's relevant? Will search engines kind of penalize you? If so, how would they be able to pick up on these things? And essentially, I guess with AI coming in, a lot of people would be able to do these kind of things. So are search engines penalizing content that's written by AI? I know Google's policy says it's okay to write as long as you're adding value. But how do they determine these kind of things? So yeah, I guess a bunch of questions, but you can answer them how you like.
Yeah, a few questions in there. So first one was around, like, you were calling it keyword bombing, targeting keywords and creating content. No, that's pretty natural. That's probably what you should be doing. I don't know what part the bombing part is, but yeah, create content around keywords. The other part of the question is around how AI is impacting this. Yeah, sites, it's taking a lot longer for Google to crawl and index websites because there's just an avalanche of content out there. Yeah. 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 So just repeat for everyone else. Yeah. So you're saying it takes about 5 days, whereas before things would get indexed faster. 5 days not too bad. Sometimes we're seeing with users, it gets indexed the same day, and then other content like takes weeks or months, because there's just, it's actually not trivial for Google to serve a search result. It's like if they're making $1 on the click, it's like costing them like, I'm going to make up numbers, but it's like 10 to 20 cents. So it's not nothing. So that's why they're trying to keep their costs down. Yeah, AI is definitely leading to a lot more content, and it's causing challenges to get crawled and indexed, which is why the brand signal matters even more. How you stand out, how you signal to Google that your content should be a priority, because it's going to help users of their search engine, which is what they care about, find what they need. So will you get penalized for using AI content? If you're doing it blindly, I think it's not going to work well. Google doesn't really penalize that much anymore. They just ignore. So they used to think that if you did something that they would assume that wasn't good, they would assume you were malicious. Now they just assume you're ignorant, right? Which is fair. Like most people building a website don't, they're not like trying to like harm Google. So now they just ignore stuff that doesn't work rather than like penalize. Because before, when they would penalize, there's a whole process that has a human review element for getting re-included. And anything that involves a human element, Google doesn't want to, that doesn't scale very well. So now they just ignore it. So if you're going to use AI content, I would say, yes, leverage it for your outlines, for things like that, but make sure there's a reason for that content to exist and you've got a point of difference and a voice to it. I'd say, yeah. Oh, yeah. So the follow-up was, how does Google know it's AI created? I don't know. I sort of have this two-sided view of Google. I just figure they've got a printing press in the basement and they've hired like some of the smartest people in the world. So in my mind, I'm like, can it be figured out? And if it can they do it economically? And so if they can, I assume they do. So I don't know how they can figure it out, but I assume they can to some extent. But yeah, that's still playing out. So I don't have a great answer. But yeah, they look at engagement metrics like you mentioned. Oh, next question.
As someone who create content, I'm wondering, I do a lot of Instagram posts, and sometimes I feel like, is it just like gone forever, like once? So I'm wondering, how does it get picked up somewhere, or is it better time to just actually do blog posts?
Yeah. So, what type of business are you in?
Fitness, wellness.
Fitness and wellness. Oh yeah. Postpartum mothers, right? Yeah. Okay, I remember. Okay, I think the question of where to allocate your time is a really hard one. If you can get some enduring benefit, I think that's good, because what you were saying around you post it and then it's gone tomorrow, honestly, like there's more money potentially in paid marketing. Like I could have made more money going into that, but or potentially social. But one, temperamentally, I just always chose search because I don't like the idea with social if I have to get up and do the magic every day. Because like, what if I can't do the magic today? It's this creative thing. Some folks are great at it. I don't want to win on talent. I just want to win on like dumb hard work. So that's why like a search moat is way more appealing to me. Now, I don't deny the upside of social if you can do it really well. Like the Kardashians have demonstrated you could build like incredible empires on top of it without necessarily a large cash outlay. So there is that benefit. So I think some of this actually, I would say, almost comes down to temperament. Like, how do you want to spend every day? And I mean, that kind of comes back to your business. But in your field, what I would be suggesting, I'm guessing if you're an expert, like medically qualified, I would signal that in your content with what's called schema, because Google cares a lot that when it comes to money and health, they don't connect users with bad sources. So they're very conservative. So they look for those credentials and authority signals. And if you can demonstrate those with schema, you're going to perform a lot better for your content. So that's a really big thing there. And I've worked with lawyers, it's the same kind of thing. So yeah, that's where I would be focusing. We can chat a little more after if you like. Another question.
I had a question on backlinking strategies. If you had, I mean, there's two questions. First one, in terms of approaching for backlinks, is it a better option to kind of go for high authority links and just a low number of them, or go for more mid-level to low-level links, but like a larger number? Is the volume of links a relevant part of that? And the second part of the question is then also the relevance of those sites. So does it have to be a very close, to a very close domain to whatever you're talking about? So if I have a software company, the backlink should be coming from other software companies or companies that are talking about software. But yeah, if you can shed some light on that.
Awesome. Should say name and company, because there'll be a transcript and that's a brand signal of this. What was the name and company?
I run a blog on remote work called Sorry I Was on Mute. So it's actually I do a lot of SEO on it. So yeah.
Sorry I Was on Mute is a great name. First of all, it's like a cricket website called Yes No Wait Maybe Yes Wait Maybe No Sorry or something like that. But anyway, for the cricket fans, quantity versus quality. We're trying to build out more modeling to show like impact, because the value of a link or a signal to your site is going to be different to everyone else. So there's this real like, yeah, it's a bit of a art at that point. Me personally, I would go quality. And in terms of how relevant does it have to be to exactly what you're doing? Look, all right, I was looking at a tax website, Australian tax website, tech company the other day. I looked at their competitors who are ranking well, and they had a ton of number one rankings, and a lot of those pages had Nigerian entertainment blogs linking to them. So the stuff I see work is absolutely like egregious black hat nonsense, and Google could clean it up if they wanted. Like, it seems pretty obvious. If it's a Nigerian entertainment blog and it's an Australian tax website, that's probably not going to be high quality, and yet it works. So to give you a sense of like where the pragmatic bar is, me personally, I would rather keep it as relevant as possible, but you have a lot more leeway there in what I see working. Yeah. Oh, Nam's got a question. Excellent.
So looks like this is going to be the final question before we hit 1 o'clock. And this question from Peter online, extension of Akash's question about quality and the quantity. So buying mentioned in just link building, as your example mentioned earlier. And his first part of the question is, how does this help with credibility, as some of those link mentioned may not of the right quality? So any comment on that? What is the tactic to enhance the quality of those mentioned?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think you can solve that sort of ahead of time by making sure that it is a relevant site to what you're doing. And we actually have with our platform, we have AI under the hood to try and take the content, the title of the content, the publisher's site, the page that you're trying to link to, and making sure that the way that it's mentioned is contextually relevant, right? Because what we see a lot of when we dive under the hood in a website and the links they're getting is, you know, it'll be like, hey, like you should drink Coca-Cola this summer. By the way, have you considered buying blinds in Dubai recently? And blinds in Dubai is linked to a website that does blinds in Dubai. And I'm like, who on earth, like no human is reading this content, right? Clearly. This is purely for search marketing. The goal, maybe as a rule of thumb, imagine Google wasn't looking, like Google didn't exist. Would you still want this link? If the answer is yes, that's exactly what you want to be doing. And the more you can close that gap and do that, the more your PR and search strategy will be one and the same.
And so I would imagine that means a higher quality link, the editorial or the quality of that influencer is going to charge more. Is that right?
Yeah, typically.
Or do you have a method on your website showing that there are some really free, good quality influencer out there?
Great question. Yes. This market has no right size pricing. So we see the most like arbitrary numbers. It's imagine if you went to buy a house and identical houses, the same neighborhood, and one's like, oh, it's 300K, the other's like, it's 5 million. Yeah, so there's actually a lot of opportunity to shop for value. We're trying to create right size pricing on our site, but the publishers determine their prices. So yeah, you can find really good deals. And yeah, we're trying to tidy that up, but it's definitely an issue.
Before we move to the next part of his question, I want to ask that extension of that question is that, so any tactic or advice how to make our founders' product so appealing to an influencer so that the influencer just happy to mention it for you for free?
Yeah, I mean, it's like be interesting, right? I think ultimately you want that alignment around what they're doing and what you're doing. And if you're solving, it goes back to YC a little bit. If you're building something users want, that becomes even better still. But in terms of appealing in the moment, be easy to work with is probably one. And then in terms of like sites, pay attention to what they're talking about and talk to them about those things. Now, through our platform, we automate most of this and handle it for you. Like that's the benefit of what we do. So we make it contextual, highly relevant. We have a recommendation score in our algorithm to present the most relevant opportunities for your site. And then we're making sure that those is contextually relevant. Our competition is like Nigerian entertainment blog links. So like, we don't have to do this much to be this powerful for you, but we actually care about doing a great job. I had this problem for 4 or 5 years myself as a search consultant, and I just got so tired of it. I went on like 0 salary for 2 years and shut down my consulting business to go work on a marketplace as a founder. So I can tell you, like, I actually care about solving this problem.
Exactly. And so second part of Peter's question is, if he wants to be mentioned by masthead media, such as AFR, how and is it possible to pay the way to be mentioned, or what is the most appropriate tactic to get being mentioned by AFR without those controversial examples you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so masthead, AFR, things like that. We don't, we don't typically, that's not the typical use case for our platform at this point. For publications like that, it's actually very important that there's no transaction and that they're sourcing quotes through our platform, and we have a mode where that occurs. It's not the focus. The way we think about this is, you know, I'll try and keep it short, but I love cricket. And then anyone in my generation who grew up in the 90s who doesn't like cricket hates cricket, because we had 4 TV stations, and during the summer, if you didn't like cricket, you lost one of them, so you hated it. People don't hate cricket anymore. They just don't pay attention to it. I make that point because now information diets have fragmented. You don't have to listen or watch anything you don't want to anymore. And so in that fragmentation, you have thousands of websites that people pay attention to. We're focusing on that long tail, not on those mastheads at the beginning. And so we're about getting you the 1,000 signals that constitute 80% of most people's information diet in your space, not just the figurehead. Those mastheads are great. And I would just encourage you to approach a lot of those directly and do newsworthy and interesting things. Like that's usually the best way to get in front of those folks. Maybe there's a bit of a network game you could play. Personally, I wouldn't hire a PR agency, you know. But yeah, I think in terms of getting in front of those people, it's just email them directly and do interesting things. And don't send them a press release. Like send them something really human that's really easy for them to connect with. We got media recently and I just emailed them directly and was like, here's why we're interesting to talk to, maybe. Like, and I'm not going to lie, in the PS, I think this helped. I said, and it would really mean a lot to my mum, so who's here. So, and I hope that connected with the journalist. They have a heart, it turns out.
I like what you just mentioned, Chris, is because there was another PR agency gave a similar talk before, but they focus on masthead media. They highlight that the key thing you mentioned accurately, Christian, is that the journalists looking for a impact story. They're looking for a story, unique story, exclusive story, but you need to convince them that it's a story they personally passionate about before they would publish it. Yeah, so I like
totally.
it.
Read what they've written before, tell them you like it, pay attention, make sure it makes sense. Yeah. Treat them like a human. Yeah. Appreciate it, man.
I think Lakia will do the closing, or Sandra will do the closing.
Guys, I just want to say, wow. I hope you love that. I felt like I learned a lot. And I hope what you saw on stage is actually something that we've always loved about Chris, is that he's so thoughtful in all his answers. Like, I won't by any means say I know anything about SEO, but he does, and he always brings it back down to earth. So hit him up, ask him questions. Hopefully it doesn't take up too much of your time. But he's always got great responses. So thank you guys, and thank you Fishburners for the space. Yay!
Thank you.